That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let's go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." For a few moments of your time, I was wrestling with two titles: Finding a Blessing in a Storm, or The Obstacles and Blessings of Crossing Over. Let us bow and let us pray. Lord, I am willing, but with you I'm able. I ask that you decrease Donald and increase your Holy Spirit. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable unto thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. Finding a blessing in a storm, or the obstacles and blessings of crossing over. Growing up in Wilmington, North Carolina, I've come to learn that there are different geographical areas, and depending on your geographical area, you have different interpretations of what a storm is or is not. Wilmington, which is a southeastern city on the coast, is prone to hurricanes. So when you hear of a storm is coming, it's most often referring to damaging winds, rains, or hail. Whereas here in the Northeast, like New Jersey, a storm, depending on the time of the year, may mean 8 inches of snow or 5 inches of rain. Nevertheless, a storm is an event that alters day-to-day events or plans. Just think about it. You planned a family outing, and all week the weatherman has been promising you. The weatherman has assured you that it will be sunny skies. But on your day, it rains. And not just rain, it rains cats and dogs. I mean, it's not drizzling. I mean, it's raining. Or you arrive to the airport to find out your flight has been delayed or canceled 2 hours because of a storm 2 to 3 hours away. Yeah. Isn't that something that you didn't even have any control over affected you? Or you planned a cruise and you've made all the necessary arrangements. You've got your passport. You have your traveler's checks. You even bought all your new clothes. You have your itinerary. And you even went as far to do all the bragging to your family and friends who could not attend the trip. But when you show up, not 3 weeks ahead of time, not 3 days ahead of time, but when you show up that day, you find out that because of a storm somewhere else, your plans have been altered. And here you are, packed and planned for a trip that you did not prepare to take. Basically, all I'm saying is that at some point, all of us will experience a storm. Now, to help clarify, and I hope it clarified because it made sense to me when I was putting this sermon together, and hopefully it makes sense to you, we want to look at two other texts kind of as reference points to help bring this all together, to help us set the stage for where we're about to go through finding a blessing in a storm. The first text is 1 Corinthians 13:11, and it says, "When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things." Now, if you notice here, there are two winds. There is a wind of childhood and a wind of manhood. For Paul, who is writing this text, it's almost like he's defining an event, defining a moment. It could be that he's speaking of his bar mitzvah. You know, that's a Jewish custom, a Jewish ritual where they formally take a child and cross him over into adulthood. Now, we don't have that type of ritual, and I think it's because we lack that type of discipline and ritual. We have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old children. Because we have failed to identify that at this moment in your life, you have to cross over from being a child, and now we expect you to be an adult. There was a defining moment for this transformation. There was a defining moment. I mean, he did it in public. He did it in public so everyone could know, everyone knew, so you wouldn't have any excuses. You know, you couldn't say, "Oh, bless his heart. oh, he's just a kid. No longer could he rest on that comfort zone. I'm not responsible for my actions, but he had to cross over. Now, it would seem like from the childhood win, or the win of childhood, to the win of manhood, we all know the quickest point between two distances is what? A straight line. But unfortunately, from the childhood win and the manhood win, something happens to that straight line that causes it to go off course. You and I like to refer to it as life. Something happens, things comes up, pressures, urges, pains, feelings, anything that can slow up or prolong the transition. For many of us, we're probably asking God right now, Lord, how long before I can make it over to the other win? Lord, it seems like it's been forever that I've been stuck in this childhood state. Why has it been so long for me to make the transition from one point of my life to another? Why is it that from one point to another point, my life seems like it's been filled with nothing but hell and high water? Why is it, Lord? To help us get a better appreciation for this confusion between the 2 points that you cross over, that you change, that you transform, I found in Daniel, there was an interesting passage in Daniel 7, verse 25, at the A portion. Write this down so you can study it later. In the A portion of this text, Daniel is recording a vision. He had 4 visions during this apocalyptic writing. And this A portion says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High God. Wear out, tire, fatigue, exhaust, debilitate, weary, drain, burden, damage. Going to wear you out. You've said it to your kids. When I get you home, I'm going to wear you out. You've been acting up in public, so I'm going to have to wear you out. Not that you would hurt or debilitate or damage your kids, but you get the picture. The enemy has one purpose, to wear you out. And note, it's nothing all of a sudden. It's something that happens over a period of time. To wear out. A boxer, unless it was Mike Tyson, very few boxers had the ability to knock a person out in the first round. They had to beat the opponent down. They had to wear them down so that when they hit them, they could knock them out further in the round. That's what the enemy is doing to many of us today. The enemy is wearing us out. During this transition period, during this transformation period from one stage to another stage in this essence of life, the enemy has decided, you know what, I'm going to wear you out to prevent you from crossing over. Now watch this. To make the transition between one win and another win, you're going to have to decide right here, right now, no matter what, right now at this point in my life, I'm going to cross over. I've been living like a child long enough. I'm going to cross over right now, and nothing's going to stand in my way. Nothing in my past and nothing I can foresee in the future is going to prevent me from doing what I have to do. I'm crossing over right now. Now, here's an interesting problem with that. There's a lot of significance from you deciding to pass over to the other side and developing storms. Let's go back to our text. In verse 35, that day when evening came, he said to his disciples, let us go over to the other side. Leaving the crowd behind, they took along, and when he was in the boat, there was also other boats. Then a furious squall. When he decided to go over to the other side, when he made a conscious decision that I need to go over to the other side, that's when the storm developed. Yeah. So I can guarantee you, and as we say down south, as sure as fat meat is greasy and Monday follows Sunday, I can guarantee you that when you decide to go over to the other side, when you decide to make a change, your storms will develop. When you make a conscious decision, I'm telling you, as soon as you decide to go over to the other side, furious storms. Now watch this. The storms come. I told you why. To wear you out. Because as soon as Christ decided to go over to the other side, the storm came to prevent him from ultimately to what he was called to do. Because you see, the enemy could care less that we come to church. Could care less. I don't care if they come to church. Matter of fact, I don't even care if they usher. I don't care if they slip on a choir robe and sing every Sunday. I don't care about that. Because it is possible for you to come to church Sunday after Sunday and never make it to the other side. It is very possible for you to come to Bible study week in and week out and never in your life make the transition from childhood to adulthood. Because when you make that change, then there's an interesting thing that takes place. The enemy would not want you to make that change. Why? Because think about it. If the men would make a change, a transformation from thinking as a child to becoming a man, do you imagine the effects they can have for generations to come? If a man was to stand up and be a man and raise his child to be a man, the enemy would now have to deal with that child raising his other child. So the enemy does not want you to make a change. So there's that reason why. Come to church all you like. Come to Bible study all you want. Sing on the choir Sunday after Sunday, I don't care. But I don't want you to make a change. Why? Because if you decided to make a change, you would come to church and worship God anyway. Regardless of what music was being played, regardless of who was singing, as long as you had the opportunity to stand in the presence of God and worship God for who God has been to you. The enemy does not want you to come to that realization. Because once you make a conscious decision, you make a cognitive decision that, you know what, I'm going to make this change, that's where the problem lies. If you sing on the choir, make a change, watch this. If you're singing on the choir and you've made a change that you're singing for God and not because of what type of music is being played or not played, you could care less if they decided to sample 3 blind mice with How Great Thou Art. You're going to come sing. Once you've decided to make that change. That's why. Think about the next time you're dealing with something. Why am I going through this? It's to prevent you from making a significant change. Now, I know that's good and all, but what about those blessings? You know, we like to hear about blessings. I don't want to hear about all these problems. I want to hear about blessings. Finding in a storm. I'm going through storm right now. I mean, I had to deal with all kinds of storms just from work yesterday. And then, you know, I need to know about a blessing. There's 4 things I want to bring to your attention. The first blessing that you need to realize as you encounter a storm, as you face a storm, is to maintain your faith. Now, I'm sure for some of you this is going to sound a bit cliche, but keep the faith. Don't lose the faith. You know, my faith is built on nothing less than Jesus. You know it. You know all the religious cliches you guys use for faith. But look at verse 40. You see, the word faith in this text is just one of 249 times that faith is used throughout the Bible, not counting faithful and faithfully. Jesus asked his disciples, why are you so afraid? Now watch this. Do you still have no faith? Now it's interesting that as soon as trouble hit, the situation got a little rough. The disciples, those people close to Christ, the disciples, those who made a conscious decision to go over to the other side with Christ, the disciples, those who had witnessed firsthand the miracles of Christ and the awesome wonders of God, the church members. I'm not even going to go there. Those were the ones who lost faith. In fact, Christ questioned if they had faith in the first place. Now, truth be told, you and I are no different. Because in spite of all the things that God has done for us, in spite of us witnessing firsthand the miracles God has given you and I in our own lives, you probably saying, well, I don't know what miracles he's talking about. Well, you woke up this morning, clothed in your right mind. You woke up having movement in your limbs. You have a job. You can make ends meet. You have 1 pair of feet, but you have 20 pairs of shoes. Just the simple things. But as soon as a storm shows up on your doorstep, as soon as things get a little shaky, as soon as you mismanaged your money and you can't pay your bills, now you want to blame God. As soon as some problems show up, here you go with your lip poked out, asking simple-minded questions like the disciples. Master, teacher, God, don't you care if I drown? Instead of questioning God, check your faith. You remember faith. You remember faith, Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. You remember faith, Hebrews 11:6. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. So when life isn't fair and throws you a storm, don't question God. Check your faith. Check your faith. The second way of finding or recognizing a blessing in the storm is you have to know how to recognize God when God shows up. In the midst of storm and confusion, you still have to be able to see clearly. Minister Rose preached last week, 20/20 vision and still blind. You have to be able to recognize God when God shows up. Now, if you look back at verse 41, they were terrified and asked each other, who is this? Even the waves obey him. You see, this is just another example of the disciples who have claimed to be close to Jesus, did not know him. Now, I know none of you in this church. I know none of you at Kane Avenue, but somebody, somewhere, in some church today claim they know Christ, claim they walk daily, yet still don't know him. Now watch this. Even when he shows up and shows out. I mean, he stopped the wind, people. You've been, just last week we had wind blowing, my umbrella flew up. He said, okay, stop. Now, if you don't believe that this is the Son of God who can stop the wind, what more? But again, these were the people who walk closely. These were the people who read the Bible. These were the people who come to church Sunday after Sunday. These are the people who, they go to Bible study, they meet in their groups and the whole 9 yards. But yet, they didn't even know who Christ was. Now, it's interesting that people who claim to know God, who claim to experience a relationship with Christ, don't know him. But it is more interesting to find out that in the Word of God, there's countless accounts of the evil, demonic spirits recognizing Christ for who he was. Now, I didn't say people who witnessed firsthand or pleasant spirits who knew that Christ was the Son of the living God. These were evil, demonic spirits. You don't have to believe me, but look at Mark 1:24. What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know you are the Holy One of God. Mark 1:34. And Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. Mark 3:11. Whenever the evil spirits saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, you are the Son of God. Now, I got to read that one again. When the evil spirits saw him, they fell down before him. Basically, they had the common sense or enough sense to know, even though they weren't of God, they still had to worship God. But yet, we come to church acting as if God owes us something, acting as if that we have been so righteous and so perfect, when the truth be told, the best we have are as filthy as rags, but the demonic spirits had sense enough to know that they needed to worship God. I want you to take this the wrong way. Maybe you need to take a page book from one of these demonic spirits. If they had sense enough to worship God, when God has been nothing but good to you, you're behind in your blessings all because of what God has done, and yet you can't bless God. Now, how is this possible? How is it that they're able to recognize and we can't? It's simple. Because you see, if you and I were blind, we would want LASIK surgery. That's all. I didn't want to fool around. I could see now, I wish that joker would spit in that dirt. Tell me he's going to put that mud on my eyes. Tell me he's going to give me my sight back. I don't think so. See, what has happened, we have gone from depending on Christ totally to depending on Christ pending that everything meets our criteria. We've gone from depending on Christ totally to depending on Christ pending that it meets our criteria. So now we're going to place our limitations. We're going to place our restrictions. We're going to place our simple-minded understandings on how God or Christ should act in our lives. Think about it from this perspective. You're in a storm. You're on fire. Literally, you're on fire. And you see what you don't think is Christ, but it's a bum on the street. This bum has a 100-gallon tank of clear water. Right next to this bum on the street is a professionally dressed, well-shaved, clean-cut, briefcase-carrying individual. He too has a 100-gallon tank, which you think is clear water. So you look at the two individuals and you are on fire and you said, you know what, I'm going to go with this one. So that individual proceeds to douse you with what you thought was water. But to your surprise, it was a 100-gallon clear tank of ethanol. So this person asked you out on a date. But because they didn't have on a three-piece suit, this woman asked you out just for an afternoon snack, but yet because she didn't dress the way you thought a lady should dress at that time, we didn't know their circumstances. But yet, I can't date you. Could have been the very best thing for you because that's who God sent for you. But yet because you couldn't recognize God in the midst of your situation, you opt for something else. That's why you living in, well, anyway. Now, this one is going to be interesting for some. Because you see, the third thing I want to bring to your attention is sometimes you have to leave the crowd to clear your head and find rest. In other words, life storms can cause you to separate from the things close to you, which in some cases is the best thing for you to do. For example, if anybody, I don't know if anybody owns a boat or not, but if you have a 35-foot boat, the same rope you use to tie that boat securely on the dock when the sun is shining and the wind is not blowing keeps that boat securely in place. It keeps it from drifting off. It keeps the boat in your eyesight so you can say, I know my boat is there. But yet, that same piece of rope, that same thing that once securely held it in place, in the midst of a severe storm would be the detrimental demise to that boat. Why? Because as the boat is connected to the rope, as the wind blows, it can't have nothing but to bounce and hit and slam and ultimately tear itself up. So that same thing that once kept you safe, family members, the same thing that once you thought kept you safe, my job, the same thing you once thought kept you safe, my church family, in the middle of a storm could be the very thing that would be your utter demise. Why? Because truth be told, they are probably happy that you're going through the hell you're going through. Now, the interesting thing about this boat and this boat owner, if the owner knows ahead of time, operative word, ahead of time, that the storm is coming, then the boat, he can unattach the boat, take it out into the middle of the sea and drop the anchor. As long as he has a good enough anchor securing that boat, the winds could blow, the waves may come upon it, but yet he knows at the end of the storm, that boat is going to be right where he left it. Now, the thing you have to think about in the midst of your storm, once you've detached yourself from the very things that could be your demise, what are you anchored by? What keeps you secure when the storms of life come knocking on your door? Now, I can tell you if it's gossip. I can tell you if it's backbiting. I can tell you if it's a conniving spirit to undermine things and people. I can tell you that when the storms of life come up, you will have no choice but to get carried out in the sea. Why? Because you were not secure in your faith. You was not secure in your relationship with God. You were unable to recognize God when he showed up. So if you're not anchored by the right thing, you will have no choice but to fail in that storm of life. Verse 36, leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. Then the storm came up, but because Jesus left the crowd behind, he was able to find rest right in the middle of the storm. Isn't that something? You know, hello, who is it on your door? It's hell. Oh, no problem, I'm going to find rest. Problems with your family and friends, you can still find rest because you've left the crowd behind so you can clear your mind, so you can meditate on the goodness of God, what God has for you. Now you can rest. Sometimes in order to achieve this fully, you are going to have to untie yourself from that rope. You're going to have to find something to anchor you so you don't get damaged in the storm. You know the song by Johnny Taylor, I Could Do Bad by Myself. She know the song. When life is throwing you a storm after storm or a tsunami after tsunami, you sure don't need somebody else that's going to drag you down and make the situation worse. Because like the song said, you can do bad by yourself. Things aren't going right. If things aren't going right for you and you always got a friend that only comes by when they know you're down, they only want to be associated with you when they see you on the bottom. They don't want to see you buy a house. They don't want to see you get a better job. If they don't come around then, you tell them, look, I can do bad by myself. Separate yourself. Shows up. And we know that they will. You'll be able to find a safe anchor. You will be able to find a conscious moment, not intertwined or meddled up by family. You know those family members, they didn't have a perfect relationship, but they're going to tell you about yours. They couldn't raise their own kids, but they want to raise yours. They don't pay their own bills on time, but want to tell you how to manage your money. Reevaluate your family. Reevaluate. Now, this preacher done lost his mind. He done told me, leave my family. That's the only thing I've ever known. That's the only people that ever been there for me. I'm going through hell and high water. I don't know which way is up. And he's telling me to leave these people. Don't he know I'll be by myself? Yeah, I do. I know those things, those people, those habits, those places you used to go. What you need to do is find your own personal hymn of consecration. My favorite one is, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. You have to fill that time. Once you've separated yourself, you're going to have to fill that void with something of real substance. You're going to have to fill your mind that when things or times are bad, you can still say, my hope is built on nothing less. When my money has run out and I still have a lot more month, my hope is built on nothing less. When the storms of life show up and that loved one leaves you, my hope is built on nothing less. When people right in the very church you attend faithfully talk about you like a dog, my hope is built on nothing less. When things don't go the way you want them to go, my hope is built on nothing less. You must find a surrogate mindset to fulfill those would-be voids, to fulfill that transition from childhood win to adulthood win. You're going to have to find something to give you a peace of mind. Your hope is built. The last thing that you need to do in a storm to find a benefit or a blessing is you have to understand the benefits of a storm. Now, what are you talking about? He just told me, I'm going to be left by myself. I'm going to have to leave my family. I'm going to have to find a new mindset. I got to think differently. I got to improve myself. What is he talking about? How can that be beneficial to me? Verse 37 says, a furious squall, which basically a squall is just a sudden violent gust of storm wind, came up and nearly swamped, overwhelmed, inundated the boat. Therefore, I believe it's safe to say that you can expect to have sudden, violent storms in life. You didn't plan for that loved one to die unexpectedly. You did not plan for that loved one to leave you. You did not plan to have that diagnosis rendered just yesterday. You did not plan for that. That was a sudden, violent, overwhelming, life-changing, almost life-killing experience. But I suggest you do like Jesus and rest in the middle of your storm. The reason why I say rest in the middle of your storm and ride it out, again, I'm from Wilmington, North Carolina, so unlike many of us who grew up in the city, during the summer, I went surfing. I grew up right there at the beach. You have to ride the wave out. You have to ride, because if you go out into the water, you go to ride the wave in, and you give up, you're going to still be in the middle of the water. You have to ride the wave out. Because truth be told, if you ask God to stop your storm, and God stopped your storm when you asked for it, you may be stuck in the middle of nowhere. You may be trapped, never get into the real purpose that God had set for you, because you cannot handle a little storm. God already said, I won't put more on you than you can bear, but yet, you want to know what the problem is? Because you walk, or say you walk, but yet you don't know him, so therefore you don't trust him. You got to be careful not to be impatient. Rest in the storm, ride it out. Can you imagine that, being stuck in the middle of nowhere? I mean, you came from one bad situation, and now God stopped it. Now you're stuck in the middle of nowhere. You don't even have nobody to listen to you. And because you haven't changed that mindset, now you're about to go crazy because you're stuck in the middle of nowhere because you didn't realize the benefits of the storm. Think about this. All of us have a washing machine, or we wash clothes someplace. You put the clothes in, they're dirty as I don't know what. You stop the washing machine in the middle of the cycle and take the clothes out. Guess what? Those clothes still going to be dirty. You have to complete the cycle for it to become clean. So whatever the storm or whatever the cycle God is transitioning you through, you have to stay fast and know that there is definitely a better outcome. The songwriter said your latter will be greater than your past. But you're going to have to wait it out and find the benefits. Now, if you continue to read, and I know Rev.Donald always encourages us to read, you have to read the whole chapter of Mark to really understand what I'm saying, because you could see that in the Gospel of Mark, you will see it was after Christ finds rest in the storm and made it to the other side. After he found rest inside the storm and made it to the other side. It was after, in Mark 5, after he'd gone through the storm, that Christ healed the demon-possessed man in the cemetery. He healed the woman with the issue of blood and raised the dead girl. It was after the storm in Mark chapter 6 that Christ feeds 5,000 people. It was after the storm, Mark 7, that Christ healed the deaf mute. It was after the storm in Mark 8 that Christ gave sight to the blind. So remember, the next time life hands you a storm, I want you to look at your neighbor. Look at your neighbor and say, the next time life hands me a storm, I'm going to do 4 things. I'm going to maintain my faith. I'm going to recognize God when God shows up. And I'm going to leave the crowd behind and find rest. And understand the benefits of a storm. Now, you remember that, because I can guarantee you, as soon as you made that proclamation and you make this decision that you're going to do these things, what's going to be waiting for you when you get home? What's going to be waiting for you tomorrow when you get to work? What's going to be waiting for you next week when you come back to church? But yet, I encourage you, Look for the benefits of your situation. You can always find that they had the NFL draft yesterday. They had what they call diamonds in the rough. These were the players, oh, no, we're not going to give them a chance. And then we draft them, and then they end on going to the Pro Bowl in their rookie year. You got to be a diamond in the rough. You have to go through the process. I'm reminded of this couple going through a store, and they see this vase. And the woman picks up the vase, and she looks at it, and it's a beautiful vase. She's going, and she wants to purchase this vase, and she hears the vase starts talking to her. The vase said, yeah, you think I'm pretty now, but you don't know what I went through to get to this point. See, you didn't see me when I was just a ball of clay sitting on the potter's wheel. You did not see me after he formed me into what he thought was a perfect shape and was not satisfied and broke it back down. You did not see me when he built me back up to only break me back down. You did not see me when he built me up to only break me back down. Then after I reached the form and shape that the potter thought I was ready for, he then took me and placed me in the middle of a hot fire. Because you see, yet I was looking like what Christ had called me to be. I still had some impurities. Although I looked as if I had it all together, I still had some faults. As though I appeared to be in my three-piece suit, that I had it all together, but yet my mind was not right. So therefore, Christ had to put me in the middle of a fire to burn out those things that was not of Christ. Then and only then, after the fire, he then had to cause more friction and polish me. He had to polish me for my colors to come out. He had to polish me for the mere vibrant essence of what I would appeal to you to come out. So when you see me in my final state, or what you believe to be my final state, because all of us are a work in progress, remember that I had to go through hell and high water. Remember I had to go through the fire and the storm. Remember that when you see me now, I'm not what I'm used to be, but God knows I'm not where I should be. I don't do some of the things I used to do, and some of the things I used to do, I don't do as much anymore. But truth be told, if you stay fast and you watch through the benefits, if you recognize God when God shows up, you too will make it through the storm. You may not be where God wants you to be. You may not be everything that God has demanded you to be. You may not be everything the church members think you should be. But you stand fast and you hold on. You hold on. Because see, watch this. Watch this, watch this, watch this. I want you to know this. I want you to know this, that some storms you're going to go through with a group of people. And some storms you're going to have to go through by yourself. Because the storms that you go through by yourself are truly for you and for no one else. The storms you go through with a group of people may be for that collective group. But I suggest that you really take advantage of those personal storms. Because in order for you to cross over, in order for you to go through where God needs you to be, in order for God to say, look, I need to take you, Deacon Armstrong. I need to take you and put you where I need you to be. I'm going to have to put you through the storm. I'm going to need you, Percy Rogers, that you're going to be faced with all kinds of stuff. But I need you to be where I need you to be. Therefore, this storm is not for you. It's not for your loved one. It's for you. You may seek comfort in them and not realize you need to seek me. Therefore, that's why I'm giving you the storm. Know this, that what I have for you is for you. But you're going to have to go through what I have for you to get what I have. It is then and only then. It is then and only then. I want to leave you with this. As you go through those storms alone, when life seems to have shot you a raw deal, when everything you've tried seems to fail over and over and over and over and over, when you're by yourself in that room and there's nobody else there but you and God, I want you to remember this. I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses. And the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. See, if you still listen to it with your family, you can hear the voice of God falling on your ear. If you refuse to let go of those things through the storm, you cannot appreciate the dew that's on the roses. If you fail just to rest in the storm, you cannot hear the word of God speaking to you saying, my child, lo, I will be with you always. When friends and family have forsaken you, lo, I will be with you. So when you come to me in that garden alone, I will walk with you. When people and family have deserted you, I will talk with you. When everybody else is talking about you, and after everybody has said you're nothing and that nobody wants you, I will tell you that you are my own. Stand on your feet. Stand on your feet, because you see, somebody came in the house of God today, and they've gone through the storms. I know, I've been there. I've been through personal storms. I thought things were going to work out one way, but thanks be to God, through the middle of the storm, finding rest in the storm, things worked out a total different way. I thought I was going to pursue a PhD in swallowing. God said, I've called you to use that time for me. You think life is going to be one way. You think that life is going to turn out this way. But God is calling you. You've used all your time for all your worldly desires. I'm calling you out of the middle of your storm. As our deacons come and stand before the church, the doors of the church are open, because you see, somebody needs to know that in the middle of their storm, that you can find rest. And not only will you find rest, you will find a beneficial blessing that only can come through the storm God gives you. So as our deacons walk down the aisle, is there one? We're not calling you to be perfect, because you remember the potter and the potter's wheel. When you think that you've arrived, God will need to break you down to get out the impurities of your life. Is there one? Is there one? Your latter will, I promise you, will be greater than your past. I'm not saying that people won't continue to talk about you. I'm not promising you that. I'm not saying that everything is going to be a bed of roses. I'm not promising you that either. But I will promise that if you rest in what God has for you, when hell shows up on your door, you can say, I found rest. I found rest. If not, the altar is going to be open for prayer.